is being recorded. Now this webinar is being recorded. Thank you. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat below. Please put questions in the question and answer module below. Staff will monitor the question and answer as many questions live at the end as we can. We will try to answer quick clarification questions during the presentation if possible. And finally, the presentation slide deck and a recording of this webinar will be available for review on the CARPC and MPO websites after the event. As a designated Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, for the Greater Madison area, we lead the collaborative regional transportation planning process to ensure that our regional transportation infrastructure and services meet the needs of the region safely and efficiently, connecting people, places, and opportunities to achieve an exceptional quality of life for all. The map shows the official planning boundary for the MPO. However, we account for travel in and out of the metro area as well. We are governed by a 14-person policy board appointed by the local units of government within the planning area, Dane County, and the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. This graphic highlights the MPO's primary responsibilities. In addition to providing a forum for regional transportation decision-making and preparing the regional transportation plan, these include leading or supporting other special plans and studies and approving federal funding for projects through the adoption of the Transportation Improvement Program. Finally, the MPO manages a program to promote sustainable transportation options. The MPO is strictly a planning and funding agency and does not design or construct projects or operate transit service. So we have one more poll to put up here for you. And we'd like to know today, what data sources do you use the most frequently? And we'll have this up just for a brief moment and see what kind of results we get.
I will leave it up for just another few seconds. It looks like we have about 60% of folks participating.
Well, as we keep getting some responses in, it looks like overwhelmingly we have a lot of usage of census and ACS data and other state or federal data, followed by data that MPO and CARPC provides. And so we're going to review quite a few of these different data results with you as we get moving forward with our presentation. All right. The MPO maintains and/or hosts hundreds of different data sets from a variety of sources, from traffic volumes and pavement conditions to land use, employment growth, and census data. The data comes in many formats. Commonly accessed maps are available in PDF form. We have several interactive mapping applications created by the MPO, access to big data sources, tables and charts, as well as GIS files that people and organizations can download for themselves. With such a wide range of data available, today's presentation is just going to be the tip of the iceberg. The first half of the presentation, we will highlight some of our more common data sources and maps. And in the second half of the presentation, we will actually dive into demonstrations of how to use some of our mapping products and explore the data portal so you can learn how to access much of this data for yourselves. In 2022, the MPO adopted our current regional transportation plan, Connect Greater Madison 2050. This plan identifies how the region intends to invest in the transportation system to accommodate current travel demands and future growth, while setting regional transportation infrastructure investment priorities and addresses all transportation modes. We recently released an interactive online plan summary, which includes some of our most requested maps and data, making it a great one-stop shop for those of you looking for an easy and convenient way to get regional data and maps. There are 3 main tabs on the interactive summary where you can find maps and data circled in orange. How will the region grow has information on future population and employment growth. Our transportation system today provides an inventory of existing transportation facilities and assessment of transportation needs. And our transportation system tomorrow features maps of our future transportation network. We will now briefly navigate each page. If you click on How will our region grow, you will see several charts for employment and household growth, including 2016, 2035 projections, and 2050 projections. You have 2 options to interact with the data. The 2 graphs in the top row will change to reflect the area shown on the map in the upper left as you pan and zoom around. This map is made up of TAZs, or traffic analysis zones, which you can also click on to get data specific for that zone. To toggle the map between households and employment, click the Layers button, which is circled in blue. In the bottom row, you can click on the drop-down box circled in purple to select 1 or more municipalities, which will then be displayed in the map above and reflected in the charts. If you click on our transportation system today, you can find all the maps listed on this slide, including pavement condition, traffic volumes, bicycle facilities, and more for the current transportation network. It is important to note that you need to click on the drop-down arrow to get the full list of map pages categorized under roadways, transit, bicycle, etc. In this example, you can zoom in and out on the map showing pavement condition and click on the roadway segments to find their individual pavement condition rating. All the maps are also accompanied by text boxes on the left, which gives some additional background and context to the maps which are being displayed. Finally, if you click on the drop-down tab for our transportation system tomorrow, you can find maps of our planned future transportation system, including future roadway functional classification, future planned regional transit network, and future planned bikeway network. Most of these maps are PDFs, which you can download and then zoom in for more detail. These maps can be used by communities to help identify future projects and as supporting documentation for grant applications. We'll now change gears a little bit, and I will pass the presentation over to David to provide an overview of one of our newer data sources that we are excited about at the MPO, StreetLight Analytics.
Thanks, Colleen. During this part of the webinar, we will focus on how the Greater Madison MPO has used its subscription to StreetLight Insight to generate customized transportation metrics. We will also describe the kinds of data we can provide to local communities. One of the benefits of our subscription is that we can provide customized transportation data to any community in Dane County upon their request. First, it's worth saying a few words about StreetLight data for those who are not familiar with it. StreetLight Data is a company that acquires and processes billions of time and location stamped travel records on a regular basis. Up until now, the vast majority of this data has come from location-based smartphone apps, such as Google Maps or any weather-related app. StreetLight recently moved away from acquiring smartphone records, location records, and is now primarily acquiring connected vehicle data records. With our subscription to StreetLight, the MPO is able to run several different kinds of analyses for custom geographic areas and time periods. We can also run these analyses for local communities upon their request as time permits. We commonly use StreetLight data to generate daily or hourly traffic volumes, turning movement counts, average daily VMT for a particular year, average speeds for a roadway corridor, and origin destination trip data. Our subscription also allows us to obtain pedestrian, bike, and transit data. If you would like to make a data request, please contact us and we will work with you to conduct the analysis. This graphic provides the full breadth of StreetLight use cases for transportation planning, traffic engineering, and safety. One of the most valuable ways to use StreetLight is to conduct a before and after study. In a few moments, I will share the results of a before and after study that examined the effect of a posted speed limit change on East Washington Avenue. In October 2020, the City of Madison, as part of its Vision Zero initiative, reduced the posted speed limit on East Washington Avenue from 35 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour between Pinckney Street and Baldwin Street, and from 35 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour between Baldwin Street and Marquette Street. To measure the effectiveness of the speed limit reductions, Madison Traffic Engineering and MPO staff ran a StreetLight segment analysis that generated average speed data on East Washington Avenue at the Ohio River Bridge for time periods before and after the speed limit change. These graphs show the effect of the lower speed limit for outbound vehicles on the Ohio River Bridge. After the speed limits were reduced, the percentage of vehicles traveling over 40 miles per hour dropped substantially. This is a big success story, especially with how reduced speeds have increased safety in the corridor. Next, I'd like to review the results of an origin destination analysis we conducted in StreetLight to determine how much average weekday traffic volume at selected locations on the Beltline originates from each Dane County community. For this analysis, the origin trip end had to be from a community in Dane County. The goal was to determine for each Beltline location percentage of all trips that come from each community on an average weekday. Again, this would only be trips with an origin end in Dane County. Trips that started outside of the county were not included in this analysis. This map shows the results from a few selected locations on the Beltline. Not surprisingly, the greatest amount of traffic originates from the City of Madison, but it's interesting to see how much Beltline traffic originates from the other communities too. Next, Ben will go over some other StreetLight analyses that we have run.
Thank you, David. This is a top routes analysis that examined the routes taken by devices traveling westbound on Frostwoods Road from Monona Drive. Of the 1,893 vehicles that pass through this gate, over 20% of them continue through the neighborhood and turn onto Broadway from Bridge Road. This is a clear case of a neighborhood experiencing increased traffic due to cut-through behaviors. During the development of the Metro Transit Network redesign, City of Middleton staff indicated that policymakers wanted to see a one-seat ride from the South Ridge area near the intersection of Century Avenue and County Trunk Highway M and County Trunk Highway Q to the UW-Madison campus, hospitals, and downtown Madison. A quick analysis of the top routes for trips beginning in this area, the area in blue with Orchid Heights and Cedar Ridge there, showed that more trips are made to the North Parmenter Street than to University Avenue along Shorewood Hills, which supported the design team's recommendation to serve Southridge with a route R2 that also serves Century Avenue to Branch Street, a destination for nearly 400 trips a day from Southridge and Northeast Middleton. So there's the R2, and you can see how that will serve a lot more of those trips. Oop. Too many animations. In addition to this and the previous example, top routes analysis can be used to analyze traffic to and from special events such as Badgers games, or to determine where customers and employees of a business development are traveling from and by which routes. It's a very powerful analysis that can be used in many innovative ways for a wide variety of projects. While StreetLight's Viz 3D platform, which is what we've been looking at, is a handy way to visualize some analysis results, some results require further analysis in GIS, Excel, or other platforms. This analysis analyzed all vehicle trips, which do not include bicycling or walking, for all traffic analysis zones in Dane County. The results were processed in Excel and imported to ArcGIS so that trip lengths could be displayed on zones where the trips originated. This map shows the percent of vehicle trips from each TAZ that are between 0 and 2 miles in length. These are trips which could, in theory, be made by bicycle due to their short length, so darker areas on the map indicate greater opportunity to support mode shift from automobiles to biking, as well as walking and transit. This analysis, which shows bicycle volumes using StreetLight index values, was used to assess the need for bicycle infrastructure along Old Middleton Road. Index values do not represent individual bike trips, but are estimates of the proportional bicycle traffic on different routes. A route with an index value of 200 has twice the bicycle traffic of a route with an index value of 100, but the daily bicycle traffic on these routes could be 500 and 250 or 50 and 25. Old Middleton was revealed to be one of the most important bicycle corridors on the west side of Madison through this review, carrying higher volumes than the path along University Avenue. That wraps up our segment on StreetLight data, and we hope that it has given you some ideas about analyses that might be helpful for your community or agency's planning work. As StreetLight Insights is only available by subscription, please let us know if there's an analysis you'd be interested in running, and MPO staff will work with you to conduct the analysis. Before our next segment, we want to ensure that you're all familiar with the concept of level of traffic stress, or LTS. As is shown in the graphic at the bottom center of the slide, current bicycle planning is based on the idea that there are 4 stages of bicycling comfort. Providing low traffic stress routes encourages the interested but concerned cyclists, who make up more than half the population, to use bicycles for recreation or utilitarian trips. The image at left shows a strong and fearless rider in traffic on Fish Hatchery Road, LTS 4. The image at right shows rollerbladers and adults and children bicycling on the Capital City Path, LTS 1. Note that with adequately maintained facilities, there are many users of this low-stress facility, even on a winter day. The 3 maps on this slide show the MPO's low-stress route finder and its suggested routes for 3 levels of acceptable traffic stress. From left to right, they are a fairly circuitous route that only follows LTS 1 and 2 routes, but the origins and destinations are circled in yellow here to make them a bit easier to see. A much more moderate stress route in the middle that follows LTS 1 and 3. It's a bit more direct than the low stress route, but still kind of circuitous. And on the right, an unrestricted route, which follows the most direct path possible, while still preferring low stress facilities to LTS 4 segments. In the next section of this webinar, we'll demonstrate this application and show you how to use it. Dan Seidensticker, the MPO's GIS specialist, will now demonstrate some of the ways that you can access, download, and visualize data that is available through the MPO. We think that this data and the available tools to access it can help communities and advocates support grant applications, such as a project closing a gap or removing a barrier, help to prioritize projects, to complete or update ADA transition plans, and to measure the success of projects in meeting goals, as in before and after comparisons. Dan, over to you.
Thanks, Ben. Yes, as Ben noted, I'm the GIS specialist with the MPO. What I'm going to do today is demo a few of our applications and also look at ways to access our GIS data. The easiest way to usually get started with this is going to our website and clicking on the Maps and GIS Data tab there. Once you've gone to that page, you'll find several other pages to links to our online mapping applications and how to collect data and so forth. You can go to the next slide there, Ben. The applications I'm going to demo here are 3 of them here. I'm going to look at the low stress bike route finder, which Ben kind of overviewed there, and then also our transportation improvement program and pedestrian facilities. And if you want to tab through those, you'll see a little screenshot of each one of these here. It's our bike route finder, our transportation improvement program, and pedestrian facilities applications. On the next slide there, I'm just going to note that time permitting, I'm going to take a look at the City Madison Open Data Portal and show you how you can download the data for free. And all that data that's on there is used in our interactive maps. And there's some other data on there too, besides just what's on the interactive maps. And then I'll get a little bit into ArcGIS Online too at the very end there, see how much time we have left and how to access some of our data right directly through ArcGIS Online. So from here, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to start by going to our website here. Okay, so hopefully we can all see our website page here. As I mentioned, what you want to do is go through the Maps and GIS Data tab here, and underneath that tab, you'll see links to several different other pages. One for map list with a series of PDF maps, and then we've got links to our GIS data, and then links to our online mapping applications. Most of our links, most of our applications are listed on this page here. You can link to them directly through this page here. I've already opened up some of them, so I'm not going to click on them to open them up. But for instance, the low stress bike route finder is right here. And when that's open, when you click on that, what you'll get is presented with this screen here. You'll have a disclaimer that you're going to want to click through. And before I get into the main routing function of this application, there's a couple of things I want to point out. Most of our applications have standard buttons on them, and in the upper left corner, you'll see the zoom in, zoom out buttons, and you'll see a home button and then a location button. And the far upper right, we also have these buttons standard to most of our applications. We'll usually have a how to use this map button. This goes into details on how to use the application, and I won't go through this because I'll demo that there for you briefly. Next button over is our legend, and that currently shows what is currently shown on the map. And you'll see that these stress levels are shown here, and the greens through the red from lowest stress to highest stress. Because the level of traffic stress is somewhat complicated, the methodology gets somewhat involved. There is a methodology tab in here too that you can look through that's going to show all kinds of details on how this LTS was created. There's also a print button here. That's for if you would like to create a PDF of a map you've created in our ArcGIS Align application here, or if you'd like to export or actually print out a hard copy to your printer, you can just click on that button here. This is a rather important button here, the turn on and off map layers button. I say it's important because a lot of our applications by default do not have everything turned on. As you can see here, only the bike LTS network is turned on. And that's mostly for just for clarification purposes, keeping things less cluttered on the map. But certainly explore underneath this button here to see what's available. For instance, and you also want to remember to click on the heading that is displayed also, or a heading of any of these actually. Those will expand into several other different layers that are available there. So for instance, here underneath this bike LTS network, although it is turned on, the traffic signals are not on yet. So we can turn those on here, and you'll see that those display on the map now. If you go back to the legend, you'll see that the traffic signal is now shown in the legend here too. The other button is the change base map. That will allow you to switch out many base maps we have in here. For instance, if you want to see our latest 2022 color orthophotography, just click on this here and that will display then. I'm going to go back to our default like gray canvas map here, so that's a little bit more clean looking map here for the demonstration purposes. So as far as the route finder itself, the main buttons are right here. We've got L, M, and U. As Ben noted, L is for the lowest stress route, LTS 1 through 2. We have the moderate stress, which is levels 1 through 3. And then we have the unrestricted stresses, levels 1 through 4. I'm going to quickly show you a moderate stress route here. Once you click on one of those buttons, you'll be presented with a address bar here, or address field. If you know your address, you can go ahead and type it in there, and there will be an automatic field popping up for you to help complete your address. And once you have an address in there, you'll notice on the map that a paddle with the number 1 is shown. So that would be that's going to be your origin then. As far as your destinations go, if you don't know an address, you can just click on the map. You don't actually need to type an address. So let's say I want to go over here someplace. So I click on number 2 there, and it automatically populates the address in the box over here, and then it will draw the LTS 1 or the moderate stress route, LTS 1 through 3. Note that there's also an add button here if you want to add more than one destination. So I'll go ahead and do that. And I'll just stick another destination 3 on here, and then it will append your route there. So you can add as many of these as you want. If you scroll down to the bottom of this window here, you'll see it has turn-by-turn instructions here. As you highlight over them, you'll see that the map itself actually highlights those too. Well, if you hover over the route that you've generated here, you see that you can drag things individually yourself. So if you like, well, I decide to move my destination down here someplace, you can click and drag your destination, or you can click and drag your route midstream. So it's pretty flexible that way. One other interesting little button here is your barriers button here. You want to depress that, and what you can do is just draw a red line over a particular route segment, saying I don't want to bike down this street for some reason there. You click on that and it will create a barrier there. So going forward, it will no longer go down that street segment there. Once you've got your route figured out, you click the clear button once to remove the route from your screen, and then click the clear button again to remove your origins and destinations. Then you can start over here, or you can go to a different stress option. If you want to go, say, go down lower, you can check that one out then. So that is the main functionality of this application. It's also good for looking for, like Ben, looking for gaps in the bicycling network also. One of the other applications, which is also shown on our website here, is our pedestrian facilities application. This is mostly an application for viewing our pedestrian facilities. I'm going to zoom in a couple levels here, and once you zoom in a little further, you'll see that more detail starts popping up, because there's quite a bit of detail in here. If you click on the legend, then you're going to see some of the information that's in our facilities application here. You'll see that they're what we call transition point accessibility. We've got several types of curb cuts and steps and so forth, showing whether it's accessible or not. And we've got our bike paths, and we also have our pedestrian paths and sidewalks and crosswalks. If you want more information about one of these particular features, what you just need to do is click on it, and it will come back saying this particular point is a pedestrian accessible curb cut, and it's also disabled access. But you'll notice that there is a triangle right next to it here, and if you were to click on that, you see that's going to come back and tell us that it is pedestrian accessible, but it's stairways, therefore it's not disabled access. One other button that is on this application that isn't on all other applications is this one here called Add Your Own Data. If you click on that, that allows you to add data directly from ArcGIS Align, or you can search for your own ArcGIS Align data if you want to add it. If you have the URL to a service, you can put it in through here, or you can upload your own shape files or GIS files directly into this application if you wish to see how they can do some analysis. Beyond that one, I was just going to briefly also show the Transportation Improvement Program. This is showing our program projects over the next five years. Click on the legend again, you'll see that it's showing projects 2023 through 2027. If you want some information about that particular project, you click on it, and you'll have a pop-up come up with some more of the details of that project. Again, this one's pretty much for just viewing the inventory and viewing the projects. So while we have some time, I want to spend a little time showing how to get to our data. There's many different ways of getting to it, but I'm only going to show you a couple different ways to do so. Some that I think are probably the easiest ways to get a hold of our data. You can also just email me anytime too, and I can help you find your data too. There's a link to the City of Madison portal on our website. And if you go to citymadison.com, where you want to go is click on the data tab at the top here. That is going to go to the City of Madison's Open Data Portal. When you're on that page, you can see there's a browse full catalog, or you can browse data sets by category. Most of our data is underneath the transportation card here. But if you want to look for just our data, what you want to do is just type MPO into that search bar there. And what's going to return then is all the data that we have hosted on the City of Madison's Open Data Portal. So if I were to scroll down to the very bottom here, you'll see that we have 46 data sets hosted on the portal. Some of these are not in our mapping applications, but all data that is in our mapping applications is shown on here someplace. So if you see something in our mapping application, that data is available through this portal someplace. If you want to, you can search by keyword in here if you wanted to search for, say, metropolitan plan area boundary or something like that. But I'm going to say, I'm browsing through here. I'm going to look for our bike path data. Here you'll see a data card with our bike paths in. If you click on that data card, what you'll be presented with is a preview screen of that data set. And our bike path data set has both existing and planned information in it. In order to find that kind of information out, what you want to do is click on a full details button here. And underneath the summary, you'll see it goes into detail on all the attributes that are in these GIS files. For example, in the type status field, you'll see that bike paths are classified as existing, planned, and under construction, etc. And note that the existing bike paths are coded EX here. So if this is the data set you're looking for, then what you can do is go directly to your download button. But I want to back up one spot here where you can also download your data through this tab here or this download button here. But I want to point out that there is a filter data option here. As I noted that this data set includes existing and planned bike paths. So let's say you just want existing bike paths and you don't want to bother filtering through this data to look for just existing paths. So in that details page, it showed you that type status indicates the status of all these bike paths, and EX is for existing bike paths. So if you click on the EX button, the preview button will now change to just existing bike paths here. And so if this is what you're looking for, then you can go to your download page. You'll see that there's several different types of files that can be downloaded here: the CSV, KML, shapefile, and GeoJSON. The shapefile is probably the most popular. If you have a filter, be sure you click on this button here, which means that's going to apply your filter to your download. One thing that's important to note out here is underneath this download options here, if you click on that, you're going to see two options here. One's going to say generate new download with the latest data, and the other one's going to say download file previously generated. The previous generated file is the last time somebody generated a file for download, and which was happened to be yesterday. But if you want to be sure you got the latest data, and particularly if you have a filter, be sure you click on the generate new download. It does take a few minutes, but this is going to get you the latest data and it's going to apply your filter. If this one here is only going to take a couple seconds to download, but you're not quite sure what the previous person created, so you're not going to be absolutely sure what you're going to get. So I recommend you always use the generate new download with the latest data set here. So I want to be sure we got time for questions here too, but I'm going to go to another way to access our data, and that's through ArcGIS Online. ArcGIS Online, it's either free or paid. You can have both accounts. You do need to have an account in order to save your maps on it, though, whether it's a free version or paid one. The free version is pretty powerful. It allows you to make all sorts of maps and pull in data. The paid version allows you to do more advanced things such as sharing maps and doing analysis. But if you just want to make a simple map, ArcGIS Online is a quick way to do it. To get started in ArcGIS Online, what you want to do is click on the map tab here. And what's going to show up is a blank canvas with an ArcGIS line map on it. The next step, let's say you want to pull in our data sets here. You want to look at them and create your own map. What you want to do is go to your drop down here by the add button and go to browse layers. When you go to browse layers, by default, it goes to Living Atlas. Living Atlas are data sets that ESRI basically sanctions. They support them and they've been reviewed, etc. Not all our data sets are listed in here. So what I'm going to do is go to ArcGIS Online. ArcGIS Online then opens up your search to anything that's available anywhere in the world on ArcGIS Online. So if you want to look for our data sets, you can see I already searched for it here. You want to search Madison MPO. And be sure you include Madison in that, because if you search just MPO, you'll be getting MPO data sets from other MPOs across the nation too. So let's go back to our bike paths that we showed in our Open City data portal here, our open data portal. You'll see here there's two different icons. You'll see one here is called feature layer and another one is called map image layer. Feature layer means that is the data set that is stored on open data portal. That is the exact same data we were just looking at earlier. So if I were to click the add button here, what it's going to do is pull in the existing and planned bike paths into this ArcGIS Online map here. And then you have the option to go in here and start stylizing your map. You can begin symbolizing your map on existing versus planned paths, etc. I won't get into the details how to do that in ArcGIS Online, but it's fairly easy to do. But I'm going to show you an example. What if you don't want to bother symbolizing all this stuff, make a stylized map? Then what you can do is go to a map image layer. And what I'm going to do is pop out here. Do I have time? Yep. I'm going to pop out here briefly, go back to our website, and I'll click on our Dane County bicycle map here. No. So what you'll see here is all our bicycle facilities. I'll symbolize as such as this here. Now, if you want to make a map that looks exactly like this when you're in ArcGIS Online, what you need to do is you go back in there and you're going to add this image layer. And this is the Dane County bicycle map. And if you click on this, it'll show you more details on what's all involved. It's all included in that particular layer. But I'm going to go ahead and add that to our map here. And it's a fairly intense data set. But I'm going to zoom in there, and it'll take a little bit while to load. But what you're going to come up with is the exact same layer that's shown in our bicycle map application. And from this point forward, then you can go ahead and add more data if you want from ArcGIS Online. Say you want to look up US traffic counts or look up Google's traffic speeds or anything. You can combine all that stuff into one ArcGIS Online map and do all kinds of mashups that way. And if you have an account, then you can go ahead and share this out with the public then. And the nice thing about connecting to these services is that this data is always going to be current and on your map. Every time we update any sort of bike facility in our database, it will automatically show up on your map then, not just on our maps, but on your maps then too. So that pretty much covers what I wanted to talk about. And I know it's a lot of information there and went through it rather quickly, but feel free to email me and be sure to jump on our website, go to that Maps and GS Data tab to look for any of the other options that are available out there. So I'll pass it back to our moderator then.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan. All right. So we have a lot of Q&As queued up already. I'm going to launch one last poll, which is data sources that you want more information about or more experience with. This will help us identify whether there's, something that we want to do a deeper dive into in the future. So please respond to that. And then we'll start going through the Q&A. So there have been a number of questions that were answered. You should be able to see those in the answered tab of the Q&A. I'm going to give the poll just a few more seconds. Looks like almost everybody's participated. Perfect. Okay, great. So it looks like big data, StreetLight analytics is what folks are most interested in learning more about, followed by the MPO or CARPC data, and then state or federal and census. So StreetLight analytics there is the clear winner. I'm gonna leave that poll open for anyone who hasn't responded yet, and then get into this Q&A. So I wanted to start with some of the questions that have been answered already, because there were a number of them related to how bicyclists are counted in StreetLight. And so, David, I'm hoping you could get to this. So basically, you know, the difference in how bicyclists are counted, whether we're doing LBS, which is location-based service data, or compared to connected vehicle data. So if David, you could talk a little bit about that transition from LBS to connected vehicle data in StreetLight, and then how that relates to counting bicyclists.
Sure. So my understanding is that the amount of available LBS data has fallen sharply, and for that reason, StreetLight has moved more towards acquiring connected vehicle data. And of course, this data is currently just data that relates to vehicles. StreetLight still acquires LBS data, although the amount is far less than it used to be. We're still waiting to hear from StreetLight what their long-term plan is in terms of counting peds and bikes. But that's all I can offer so far in that area.
And there was also a good question from Chuck about identifying anomalies in StreetLight, and you answered that that's a good opportunity, it sounds like, to do a little test. Is there anything more you want to say about that?
Yeah, it was definitely, there was mention that there was a location that had seen some vehicles, and perhaps there's other locations too where vehicles were traveling on the bike path. And so we could certainly see if StreetLight is able to identify any vehicles that do that. You do typically need a large enough sample size, so might be a good test to see if StreetLight can capture that or not.
And if I can just add on to that, that one of the first sort of issues that we identified with StreetLight and running analyses is that quite often slow moving vehicles, say in large parking lots, will often get misinterpreted as being bicycles or pedestrians. And so if the Easttown Mall parking lot has an incredible number of bicycles and pedestrians, according to StreetLight. And so we do have to use our awareness of the situation and double check some of those things. Similarly, large industrial buildings or malls where people walk around a lot in them get counted as very high pedestrian activity zones. And part of that is that those trips are getting snapped to the nearest OpenStreetMap network. So if there's a pedestrian way that is nearby, then those trips are getting snapped to that. And that could be a problem if a vehicle was driving on a bike path slowly. I don't think StreetLight could probably identify that because it's moving at the correct speed and it's on that OpenStreetMap network. So it would likely just get snapped to that, and it would require the speed to show that something was amiss in the data.
Yeah, that's thanks for providing that, Ben. And I would say with connected vehicle data, it's possible that those vehicles may actually get tracked on those paths. But again, if the volume is pretty low, not sure how StreetLight would report that.
Ben, do you mind adding a little bit more too on Steve's question about that smartphone app? I thought that was a really good question.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's in the Q&A there, but we did get a question about the availability of an app or some way that bicycles and pedestrians could become connected vehicles. There is currently an initiative the Internet of Things, to use the jargon, where it would be instead of vehicle to vehicle or vehicle to infrastructure, it would be vehicle to bicycle, V2B communication. And so I think it's Ford and GM and at least one other major, maybe Toyota automaker, and then Trek and Specialized and one or two other bicycle companies are working together to try and figure out how that would work. And certainly with the increase in e-bikes, it becomes much easier for the e-bike itself to truly be a connected vehicle. Beyond that, there are also a few companies that are starting to make apps that do turn your cell phone into sort of that portal to the connected vehicle world to try and make sure that smart vehicles, so to speak, connected vehicles, are able to sense and be aware that there is a vulnerable road user, a pedestrian or a bicyclist in their proximity. But of course, it's like a helmet. It's a safety thing that only works if you put it on. So if you don't have the smartphone, if you don't have the app, if it's not running, then it's not really going to be very helpful. I would expect that to become much more common in the future, though.
Thanks, Ben. I'm going through a couple of these questions that have already been answered in the Q&A because I think they're worth expanding on for the whole group. So Sonia had a question about how up to date is the pedestrian facilities map. And I think beyond that, just this is a lot of data. How is it maintained and how up to date is this data? And if you see something in your community that isn't reflected in the maps, how can you get that information to us and have the map updated?
So this is Bill Holloway here. I do most of the pedestrian facilities updates, and this we just started doing this a few years ago, and compared to the bike facilities that we keep track of, it's much harder to figure out where the new sidewalk facilities are being installed, particularly curb cuts. I think a lot of the time when these get replaced, it's sort of just in the course of business. It's not something that's really identified in a way that we can get a hold of it. And we had tried working with communities to get that information, but it seemed like pulling teeth. So mostly I update this when we get the new ortho photography layers. So we have a 2022 ortho photo layer now that I've been looking at and drawing in the line work for the sidewalks and updating curb cuts and so forth as I'm able. But it's a little bit easier in some of the new neighborhoods where you can easily, where you're looking at the map and you can see these areas where there's obviously sidewalks and that information needs to be added. These little spot fixes where there was a missing segment of sidewalk or where a curb cut has been added where before it was inaccessible. Those are a little bit harder for us to find out about. So if there is an area where you find out that our information is not reflecting what's actually on the ground, please, you can send me an email. It's wholloway@cityofmadison.com, and I will put it on my list. Of course, these things, it takes a little while to get it in there and get it actually reflected online, but I'll do my best. So let me know, and we'll get it in there.
I just want to quick point out too that our bicycle application has a report function. So if you see a facility that you know is there, it's missing, you can just go to our web map and you can report that something's missing. You can click on the map and upload information about it, NGS files, etc. That it's not available on our pedestrian facilities application yet, but I intend to add that functionality to it soon, sometime this year too.
Perfect. And I just popped Bill's email in the chat. And Dan, the next question is for you. Inquiring minds want to know, what are your ribbons for?
Oh yeah, I should take those things down, but no, it's not a bake sale, I can tell you that. It's it's for making it's conferences from map competitions and so forth. So that's what they're all from many years.
Yes, Dan's our GIS guru. He's very well decorated. Okay, so moving into the open questions, it looks like Steve has one here that's a very technical question. So I'm going to let Dan try to answer that one offline. And then Brian has a question about, it would seem StreetLight data is going to miss older vehicles or people who turn off location data for privacy reasons. Do we know what percentage or margin of error there is in StreetLight?
I'd be happy to take a stab at that, and David, maybe you want to jump in as well. I think it was somewhat of a surprise to StreetLight subscribers when StreetLight announced that they were moving away from location-based services data and into this connected vehicle data. And we have the same questions. They've done a lot of really great research, and there are a lot of white papers explaining the margin of error and how they verified that under their old system and their old algorithms. And it's sort of an unknown with a connected in vehicle. Certainly I'm concerned if there are certain neighborhoods that are going to become overrepresented because there are more newer cars, and there are other neighborhoods where, because they're older cars, there aren't as many connected vehicles. We're going to be missing large segments of the population that way. And we don't really know how StreetLight is going to be addressing it. So it is sort of an open question at this point. I think they are also very aware of it and are scrambling to try and deal with it. But it was also a change that was forced on them to some degree with greater political attention to big data. There are more and more states that have privacy laws that prohibit the collection or the resale of that data. And so they simply aren't getting the data that they used to get. And they're now having to work to try and fill that gap. David, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, thank you, Ben. I think you covered it as much as I was going to say. I think I would only add that StreetLight did acknowledge that there would be a bias with only newer vehicles having that connected vehicle technology being included in the data. And so I think their response to that was that there's biases in all data, which is true. But that is certainly a concern, and we hope to see how StreetLight will handle that in the coming days.
Okay, thank you guys. So last question before we wrap up. I think this is a good question to take us out, also given how much interest there was in StreetLight in the poll. So StreetLight, it's a news source, seems very powerful. Can you guys talk about something that you're most excited about using this data for right now? Something that's coming up or that we've been thinking about?
Well, the biggest thing that comes to mind for me is we're doing an EV regional EV infrastructure plan that's electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And so right now we're working with StreetLight to get dwell time information. So that's the amount of time that cars are stopped in different locations around the county. I'm putting together zones that are going to cover clusters of commercial type development, and we'll be figuring out how long cars are stopped in those locations to develop sort of a rough estimate of the demand for fast charging infrastructure. So those level 3 chargers that can charge your EV most of the way within, say, 30 minutes. Those are very, very expensive compared to slower chargers. And the idea is you want to put those in places where people stop for short amounts of time. So we'll be using StreetLight to get information about cars passing in and near these zones, how far their trips are, and other information like that. And then, as I say, we're working with StreetLight to get some additional information about how long these stops are. So that is exciting. We'll be able to prioritize these different types of charging infrastructure in these zones and identify the places where that might be most promising for public charging infrastructure.
Thanks, Bill. That's also a great transition to forecast future webinars. I think that's one that we'll be looking at doing sometime later this year, is talking about trends with EVs and what we're finding and doing with the EV transition study for the region. So I'm going to hand it back to Colleen to take us out for the day. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Yes, we just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for tuning in and participating in our joint webinar series. Again, we presented a lot of information. We have a lot of different data sources that we weren't able to go into depth today for this presentation. Staff is always available if you have any questions on mapping data related questions, either how to navigate it, question on actually gathering that data, and we're happy to try and accommodate your requests as best we can. And with that, wishing everybody an enjoyable and warm rest of your day. Thank you.